Lalo Salamanca's secret weapon. Why did he want Jimmy to kill Gus? What does Joker, Deadpool, and Abed from Community all have in common? If you were to mull it over, chances are you'd eventually boil it down to their quirky personas and unpredictability. It's always a thrill to figure out what kind of shenanigans the Joker is thinking of doing next, what kind of tricks or one-liners Deadpool is going to use in order to get out of yet another sticky situation, or what kind of nonsensical pop culture-laden antics Abed are going to rope the rest of the group into. Unpredictable characters keep their audience on their toes. They are a good spice to throw into an otherwise traditional plot to keep things interesting. The Breaking Bad universe is no stranger to this. With unpredictability coded into the show's structure, there's no shortage of unpredictable characters in the show. Things like Walter's transformation and impulsive tendencies, or Gus's often retrospectively revealed elaborate plans, make sure that the plot stays fresh and the audience stays on the edge of their seats. However, in Better Call Saul, there is a character that I believe embodies this concept to a greater degree. Despite appearing fairly late in the series, Lalo Salamanca quickly became essential to Better Call Saul's plotline. Vince Gilligan stated that Lalo was supposed to show up much earlier in the series, but remained underdeveloped until season 4. The crew kept referring to him as the boogeyman character that wouldn't show up, although planned from the very beginning. Lalo was eventually introduced in season 4. Framed as a very personable and charming guy, he offered Nacho his cooking that he claimed to be a well-kept family recipe. In contrast to the other Salamancas, or even just other Breaking Bad characters we know so far who happen to be, as Mike says it, in the game, Lalo seemed much more laid back and carefree. However, we quickly saw what he was capable of as he immediately honed into the assumption that Gus Fring had conducted foul play in order to get revenge on the Salamancas. In this sense, Lalo's character was always meant to be a foil to Gus. He was supposed to act as a more active obstacle in Gus's quest for revenge. Throughout the series, Lalo would concoct and execute plan after plan to ensure he would eventually be able to take down the Chicken Man. None of the other Salamancas would properly work as Gus's rival. Tuco was simply too incompetent. The twins, while they were fine as additional flavoring, failed to deliver a more engaged personality that was capable of interaction with Gus, hurting their potential to become Gus's proper rivals. Although Hector had always been the face of Gus's revenge due to his physical condition, he couldn't influence the plot the way Lalo would. Hector here acted more as a plot device than a character. Hence, as Gus's foil, Lalo's unpredictability became a point of interest. In this video, we are going to take a look at Lalo's characterization, as well as his role in the Breaking Bad Better Call Saul universe. His relationship with Gus, as well as its implication, are explored. Lalo's friendly and outgoing personality wasn't written without a purpose. As Gus's foil, their differences need to be highlighted to create further tension. Despite both being intelligent, calculating men capable of cruel acts of violence, Lalo had this free-spirited approach to crime. While Gus had always been a careful, long-term planner that preferred eliminating as many uncertainties as possible, Lalo would always execute his plan with a dash of spontaneity. It wasn't like Lalo didn't make plans or that he was clumsy, but he seemed to thrive, at least more than Gus, in situations that weren't well accounted for. An example would be his first on-screen murder. Having lost track of Mike, Lalo impulsively murdered a travel agent just so he could get further leads on what Mike was really up to. This kind of impulsive murder seemed to be the standard when it comes to Lalo's mode of operation. When he killed the couple that sheltered him for a few nights, although it was clear that he did it so he would have a body double to convincingly fake his death, it was framed as an act of whim that the audience wasn't prepared to see. This ran in contrast to how Gus handled his problems. Although Gus did oppose murder, his crime always gave the impression of being extremely premeditated and pragmatic. Lalo, on the other hand, always felt like they had a little bit more emotion in them. Despite both murdering people in an absolute state of cold blood, it seems the series wants to paint Lalo as a passionate criminal, as opposed to a rational one. The differences between the two of them are most apparent when Lalo finally put his plan in motion. During the time Lalo attempted to expose Gus's secret construction, which he planned to use to take down Gus. As Lalo's suspicion of Gus grew bigger, he knew it was only a matter of time before he discovered the construction that Gus had been hiding from the cartel. Having known that Nacho was involved with Gus and, by extension, the attack on Lalo's mansion, Lalo started suspecting Jimmy to be involved as well. At this point, Lalo was on the run. Mike and Gus knew that Lalo was actively working to bring about their downfall, so they put up armed guards in any place that Lalo might show up, including Jimmy and Kim's apartment. As Lalo called Hector to inform him of the latest updates, Lalo realized that Hector's line had been bugged. Deciding to use this to his advantage, Lalo called Hector anyway, telling him that he couldn't find proof of Gus's secret construction project and would just storm Gus's house and take him down that way. This was, of course, a bait, so Gus would move most, if not all, of his men currently guarding other spots of interest to guard Gus's house. Having successfully derived Gus's guards out of the laundry, Lalo decided to pay Jimmy and Kim a visit. Here, Lalo wanted to confirm Jimmy's involvement in the attack on his mansion. However, he instead told Jimmy to go and kill Gus. This might initially seem perplexing. After all, why would he send a lawyer who had never held a gun before to kill one of the most well-guarded and paranoid drug kingpins in Albuquerque, let alone after he made sure that all his guards were at Gus's place, the one he was sending Jimmy into? However, Lalo never meant for Jimmy to kill Gus successfully. To him, sending Jimmy distracted Gus and his men in two ways. The first, more obvious one, was that it was an extension to his initial distraction, making sure that Gus and his men were distracted for even longer, allowing Lalo more time to snoop around Gus's laundry building to look for proof of his secret construction. In this sense, it didn't matter who was sent to kill Gus, which was why Lalo eventually approved after Jimmy persuaded him to let Kim go instead. However, the distraction didn't stop there. He also needed to make sure that Mike was occupied. Lalo knew that Jimmy or Kim had connections to Mike. After discovering that Jimmy had lied to him when he went and got his bail money, and realizing that Nacho, who was undoubtedly involved in the mansion attack, was the one that introduced him to Jimmy, it was obvious that Jimmy, and by extension Kim, was somehow related to Gus. Once one of them, again, it could be either of them, reached Gus's place, they would ask Gustavo's men for help, saying that Lalo was inside of their apartment. This would create a further distraction, as Mike would most probably send his men to Jimmy's apartment, thinking Lalo was still there. This gave ample time to send incriminating footage to Don Eladio of the construction Gus did behind their back. Throughout these actions, we could see how Lalo made multiple impulsive moves adapting to the kind of sticky situation he was put in. He didn't know Hector's line was bugged, but he turned what was an obstacle into a tool to assist him in his plans. He wasn't planning on going to Jimmy and Kim's apartment, but he decided to further utilize them as part of his plan. He didn't necessarily plan for Kim to go to Gus's place instead of Jimmy, but he let it happen because it didn't interfere with his plans. All of this on-the-fly thinking was Lalo's defining characteristic that Gus did not have. This is what allowed them to be great rivals and make Gus's quest for revenge even more meaningful and engaging. Lalo isn't a complete loose cannon. He understands the importance of plans and preparation. However, unlike Gus, he doesn't feel the need to be always in control. He prefers rolling with the punches, and he doesn't mind modifying his plans if the situation calls for it. This is why Lalo works well as Gus's foil. His capability for mayhem is the perfect match for Gus's excessive paranoia. Through quick-witted thinking and a fun, laid-back personality, Lalo Salamanca manages to give even the Chicken Man a run for his money.